Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call the Richmond City Council meeting of Monday, September 25th, 2023 to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Any discussion? All those in favor, opposed, carried. Any agenda additions or deletions?
None, your worship.
All right. I may have a motion to resolve any committee of the whole to hear delegations on items on the agenda. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Is there anybody here wishing to speak to us on an item on the agenda? Someone who's not a staff member, maybe?
Move Horizon report.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, opposed, carried. That brings us to the consent agenda. There's a couple of items that have been taken off. First of all, we have receipt of committee minutes. Then we have a land use application, 7560 Ash Street, rezoning from single family RS1F to single family RS2E. The Dolphin Avenue one has been taken off. The Child Care Strategy Guiding Principles, the Local Government Climate Action Program, Year 2 Survey Report, and the 2021-22 Corporate Emission Inventories. We have the Cambie Road Overpass Repair and the 2023 Zero Carbon Step Code and the BC Energy Step Code requirements for new buildings. And finally, the BC Utilities Commission, the Regulatory Efficiency Initiative Intervenor Request. May I have a motion to adopt those by general consent? Moved and seconded. Comments, Councillor McNulty?
Yeah, I just had a comment and a question of staff, actually. On the, and I'll be supporting everything in the child care strategy we discussed at committee, a great report. And when I look at what we're doing, the adverbs and the guiding principles are really taking us a long way when we talk about engagement and equity and collaboration and integration and that. So I think we're stepping in the right direction and leading, and I appreciate that. My question is, how many $10 a day childcare programs do we have in Richmond? And given where the governments are coming from, do we have an opportunity to get more?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, we currently have 13 $10 a day childcare facilities in Richmond. 7 of those are in our city-owned facilities. Okay. And there was a recent call for proposals for additional programs to join the $10 a day program. And we are anticipating that there will be many more programs in Richmond who have applied. And we will share updated information about who gets accepted into that program once it's public.
And just quickly, is the pot of money coming from the governments still lucrative, or is it drying up? Because they've embarked on this, I just wonder if they've kept adding to the pot.
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, the provincial government and the federal government through the transfer payments are both contributing to the $10 a day program. And as far as we hear, information, money is continuing to flow into those programs.
Okay, thank you. Well, great job. Appreciate the strategy. We'll never be able to do enough because there will always be children. Thank you.
Okay. We'll go to Councillor Au.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Well, I'm thinking along the same way as Councillor Manati. I have questions on the $10 daycare as well. Okay, so it's good that we have the numbers, but what has been your assessment on the impact of that policy or that program on the, the overall daycare supply or services, to our community?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, the impact of the $10 a day program for families and for the community has been amazing. For families who could not have afforded quality childcare, who are now able to afford that at $10 a day, and for families who couldn't afford childcare at all, those families are now able to afford childcare and re-enter or enter the workforce or post-secondary education.
Okay, good. And my follow-up question is, now, I don't know if in this review or the development of the new report strategy, will we touch on the provision of manpower, human resource issue. We know that there's been a great demand for childcare staff, and then I think many operators complain that they cannot get qualified staff. So will we touch on that in our consultation?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, yes, workforce recruitment and retention will be a component of the information that we're looking at in compiling the strategy.
Okay, good. And my final question on this would be, again, you're talking about there will be a broad range of representatives from the public and the non-profit organizations. And then you mentioned parents. So how will you recruit the parents for this round of consultation? And how do you make sure that those parents are, and who are the parents you're targeting? Parents already have children in the daycare services, or people who might need the service in the future?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, we will be doing a Let's Talk Richmond survey that will be available to all Richmond residents, whether they are currently parents, whether they're grandparents, or whether they intend to be parents in the future. We are also going to be hosting focus groups with parents, and we have parents represented on the advisory committee who are leading the development of the strategy.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for the information. And I also have some questions on another item, which is, let me see. Item 13, the Zero Carbon Step Code and the BC Energy Step Code requirements for new buildings. Again, very good report. I support everything, but I have basically two questions. So with these changes, have we talked to the industry about the cost implication? Now, in the staff report, there's no cost financial implication for us, but would it be make it more expensive for people to build or to equip those, the new facilities?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, the cost when the STEP Code and the Energy STEP Code were developed, there was extensive modeling undertaken by the province, and even the city did its own modeling. So the estimated capital cost is around 1%, so often less based on the pathway that's chosen. And as the STEP Code progresses, they have a cap of 2% increase in cost. So generally speaking, there's the costs I would suggest are negligible. Where you see, I guess, some costs for builders if it's their first time doing a building that's that type, or there might be those kind of costs related to trades, but not the actual building.
I see. So the building community haven't raised good concerns about the cost?
No, they have not.
Okay, good. My second question is, now I remember that, when this issue is being brought up in Vancouver, and some people argue that, okay, this might have an impact on some cultural groups because they use open flame for cooking. So again, consultation, have you heard anything about this kind of concern in our local community?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, no, not directly. That discussion, I believe, also occurred at Metro Vancouver, where it was raised. We haven't seen that issue in our consultation to date.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'll be supporting the consent agenda, and I'll just make a comment on one of them, and it's the childcare strategy. Agree with a lot of the comments already made. I really appreciate the fact that it's a 10-year horizon, and the 4 phases and the guiding principles are really thorough and complete for anybody who wants to have a look at that. Just a quick question for staff, and Councillor Au touched on it a little bit, but one of the things I wonder about is how we assess the amount of private care that takes place in the community, either by grandparents, by friends, by private means, and how that fits in with what we're doing in terms of accessible childcare, because I think it takes up a considerable chunk of the childcare needs. I'm just not sure how much. So I take it that this process that you've outlined is going to be how we assess that. And I'll just finish off with the comments that I heard at UBCM, which were quite complimentary about what Richmond has been doing to date. And so that's a compliment to all of you who have done the work. And we are actually not just saying we're ahead of other communities. I think statistically, we're significantly ahead of other communities. More work to be done. But if you just comment on how you assess the private daycare provided by people.
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, We will be looking at informal childcare in the survey questions that we will be putting out, as well as the engagement. We do know that from the engagement that took place for the 2017 to 2022 needs assessment, there were approximately 35% of parents using informal types of childcare as their primary childcare means. And so we will be reassessing that number and looking at that as we develop the new strategy.
Yeah, and I think it's important just to comment that not everybody has access to that type of childcare, so those who do are lucky and fortunate. So thank you very much.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to speak to a couple of items. Number 7 is the Ash Street redevelopment. Basically, the back of the lot is going to be divided into a separate lot so that another home can be built. And there is already a road on Armstrong Road behind Ash Street, so that's how that will be accessed. And then on the childcare strategy, I'm really pleased. It's a 10-year strategy, and from what we've been told by staff previously, Richmond is a leader in providing childcare spaces. So we're going in the right direction, and that's a very, very good thing. Regarding number 10, the homeless strategy, I'm wondering.
No, that's
Oh, that's off, right, sorry, my apologies. I'll get back to that later. And then number 11 is the request from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for a $200,000 grant for a greenhouse gas reduction pathway feasibility study for civic facilities. If we do not get the grant, would we still do the study at maybe a smaller scope?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, yes, that the study would proceed without the funding. There's available resources for that.
We've got $325,000 already earmarked for this study, right, out of our city dollars?
Correct. If the report is approved, that will be used for the study.
Okay, great, that's super. And that actually maybe don't go anywhere. So the zero carbon step code and energy step code, that's item number 11 on the agenda for new buildings. How will our new approval system that's all automated assist in maybe making things go a little faster? I forget what it's called. It's got the short, what's it called? The new system for, I think Wayne knows, Mr. Craig knows.
I think Wayne should answer this question, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if that will tie into this at all.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, I believe what you're referring to is the permitting optimization project.
Yeah.
There are a number of initiatives within that permitting optimization project that will relate to building permits as well as development application reviews. In terms of the step code, there's nothing specific that will tie into that project. The project overall will identify a number of efficiencies within our existing review, and where possible, there will be a technological solution implemented for machine learning reviews where possible.
So our new permitting process, is that already already been activated?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the project is in its initial stages. We are expecting that the initial stages of building permit acceptance and issuance will happen within the next 6 to 8 weeks. Overall, the project will extend for some time, likely over the next 2 years.
And the idea is to shorten the time it takes to get a permit so people can get going?
Correct.
All right, thank you very much. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, just a minute. Okay, with that, we'll call the question on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed?
I had a question.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Councillor Wolf, you had a question. Sorry, I missed you.
Yeah, no worries. I
Go ahead.
apologize for not being there. Just a comment on a few of the items on the consent agenda. I will be in support of everything that remains on it. I just have learned of a couple of things I just wanted to share and ask. I won't go too far into the child care strategy guiding principles. And it's great that we're a leader in so many ways, but we do need to be aware that the demand is continuing to exceed what we're able to provide. So it's about 64% of childcare or children are not being met by childcare spaces in the city. So yeah, definitely still work to do in that regard. And I think the guiding principles are helping us to continue to do our best. Next one is item number 11. I don't know if staff need to respond to this. They did give us, council, a memo in regards to some of the questions that we asked at Public Works and Transportation Committee. One of those was about the number of full-time equivalent positions we have. And in case you didn't see this, it came in today. We have the equivalency of 65% of a director, 2.9 managers, 9 project managers, planners, and engineers, and 3.6 operational staff dedicated to working on climate action in the city. I think that's remarkable, and we have approval to hire more in specific areas. I did point out about 8 different parts of the city's survey that could be altered or changed, but I think staff, their note in the end of that memo was that they've asked the province for guidance for next year's survey. So I think it's okay that the things I had pointed out are not in our package today, because I think what we're submitting is full, and we can be more detailed if it needs to be next round. I also want to just speak lastly to item number 13, and I will have a question. It's about the zero carbon step code. So I've learned a lot attending the UBCM last week in conversations with what different municipalities are doing and where the province is going with the step code, zero carbon step code. So first off, maybe I'll start with a question to staff. So this relates to both Part 3 and Part 9. Many municipalities or people I've spoken to are trying to mirror those two, so they're not different, because this whole thing is confusing enough, the different types of step codes and energy levels and numbers and all this stuff. So many of them are mirroring Part 3 and 9, so all of the buildings, not exempting some, would have the same requirements. So that's my first question. I have a couple follow-ups.
Through your worship to Councillor, if you're asking specifically if we're mirroring the Part 9 and Part 3?
Yes, if we're attempting to do that, yeah.
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, no, because we've had pre-existing requirements. For instance, this townhouses prior to the step code implementation had a rezoning policy for energy efficiency. So our starting point was higher, if you will. And we also consider that Part 3 buildings, more or less the vast majority, if not all, are being built in city center area. So we're looking at how those changes in this step code relate to our district energy utility. So our context is very, very different than a lot of cities.
Yes, and I think another thing that really stood out for Richmond's approach here is that we have a lot of choices for builders, and many people I spoke to were surprised that we were giving 2 or 3 options for what builders could choose to meet our requirements. So I think that's great. It gives people a lot of different ways in. And so my next question is something I learned of at UBCM called the Permit Connect BC. It's a new app to get any provincial permits. And I tried to get the response and they weren't able to give it to me. Is Richmond a pilot of that? And I ask it at this moment because it again would help if our language and requirements for step code are different from other municipalities. I wonder how that will factor into the provincial Permit Connect. So because we want to be early adopters and leaders in this, are we one of the pilot municipalities?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, as far as the energy step code and the zero carbon step code, that would not, as far as I understand, be part of this permitting process. I'm not certain, I don't believe the city, but I can't speak to that fully because I don't know that information.
Okay, thanks. Then I'll follow up on that. But my last question on this item, I've learned that the province is planning to in the next, it's not clear when and what, but in the next 5 years, they're going to have, by a certain year, you can no longer build to a certain energy level or step code. It'll be eliminated from the options that municipalities can present. What I see here is because on our page 127 and 129, it kind of shows in those tables where we're hoping to phase this in. And I kind of feel that when the province does say, hey, by this year, you have to have that no longer allowed, that we're going to be pushed by the province to make the elimination or mandating of certain options. Does staff feel that we're going to try and stay ahead of that push from the provincial regulators and that we can remain as leaders and kind of be a step ahead?
Through your worship to Councillor Worth, that wouldn't be a concern in Richmond. We've mapped this out to be 5 years ahead of the 2032 building code. So as the building code inches forward towards greater energy efficiency and greenhouse gas performance, we'll have already had that in our step code. And by the time that's fully implemented, we'll already be at the, subject to future council endorsements at the highest levels of the step code by 2027.
Great. Thank you very much. I don't have any other comments on the consent agenda. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to call the question then on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So we have the two items. They both come out of Planning Committee. We'll ask Councillor McNulty as Chair of Planning to introduce them. First of all is number 8. Let me just activate your mic. Okay, there you go.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Number 8 is the application by Gurrit Pooney for rezoning at 9371 Dolphin Avenue from a single detached RSP1 zone to a single detached RS2K zone. And the recommendation is that the zoning bylaw 8500 and the amendment 10485 for that rezoning at said properties be rezoned from RS1B to RS2K, and it be introduced and given first reading, and I would so move.
Moved and seconded.
And the only comment on that, Your Worship, the property is going to be subdivided to create 2 single-family lots with access from Dolphin Avenue. The map, we have maps in there, and the vehicular access for both lots is to Dolphin Avenue. So the developers met all the statutes, and staff have put the presentation forward for our consideration. So I shouldn't really have any issues on this now. We dealt with the Met plan.
All right, Councillor Wolf, you had a comment or a question or something?
Yes, it's just a comment, actually. I did attend planning and heard the discussion. I made some comments then and there. I'll just highlight 2 pages in our report here on our page, CNCL 52 in the report. We're giving the applicant basically 2 options for removing a neighbor's tree. One option would be to not remove the tree. And I think that's where Planning Committee should have taken this, is to basically say, if it's taken this long to come through the process and you still can't get a hold of the neighbor who's right over the fence, then you should be planning to build accordingly and build a setback, as opposed to waiting and after this approval tonight, later on somehow getting the neighbors to agree to remove their tree. I think if it's being decided at Planning Committee and then again today at Council, before it goes any further, it should be determined what the applicant needs to do. It's left up in the air that this 55 centimeter lodgepole pine can be removed. And this is coming from an applicant that already removed 2 trees illegally and faced a fine. So I think they should just not be touching neighbors' trees. So I won't be supporting the options that are presented in this recommendation.
All right, no other speakers. So with that, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. That brings us to number 10, the homelessness strategy. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The homeless strategy item that's on the agenda tonight is a strategy for 2019 to 2029, a 2022 update. The recommendation from the committee is that the homeless strategy 2019, 29, and 22 update, as outlined in the staff report, the homeless strategy update August 28th, 23 from the Director of Community Social Development we received for information. And the homeless strategy, again, 2019 to 2029 with the update, be distributed to key partners and organizations, local members of Parliament, members of the Legislative Assembly, and posted on the city website. And I would so move.
Moved and seconded.
Okay, Your Worship, this strategy, and I want to thank staff for it. It's a very copious report of a complex subject, obviously, in the complex issues, because it involves all of us in this and these. Looking at the homeless, there are people. It's reported we have about 85 in Richmond in various aspects of homelessness, and it is a very aggressive strategy. I love the vision on it. It's very well laid out, and it's a model actually for other communities to see that by 2029, homeless in Richmond will be rare and brief and non-recurring. And that's 6 years from now. So that's an aggressive approach. And I think the strategy leads to that because of the actions that we have in Appendix 2, Your Worship, on 63 to 66. We're to be working on this over a 10-year period. And we've already made some indents, I would say, to it with Astor Place and Alder Bridge and Smith Crescent. But more importantly, some of the other things that we're doing, because the issue remains critical and it's a growing issue in the community, but providing some hope for people, places to go and destinations, and so that they can hopefully have some normalcy in their life. When I look at not only what we've done in terms of an update, in terms of, but some of the things that we are providing in warming centers, drop-in centers, food outreach, community conversations, and most of all, and I appreciate that, and it goes without saying, that we have to train our staff. We're not all educated and trained in this particular area. And I think that is a critical one. I just hope we're putting enough resources in that as well. We've completed 184 of our staff have already completed, so I think that's extremely important on it. But more importantly, there's more we can do now, and there's more we plan to do. And I think it's an aggressive approach, Your Worship, with the strategy, but I believe it's realistic, and I think it's important. And solving this is not just money. It's acceptance, and it's a will to commitment and an attitude. And I think that's important, and especially the NIMBY concept, when we start putting various things within the community. I think people have to realize that we have to have all forms of housing, whether it be modular housing, those kinds of things, coach houses, row housing, whatever. I think we need to look at it. One of the issues of homelessness is housing, obviously, and we want housing, but we've got to not fight with developers, but support them and try to get them to work with us to provide additional housing. I know we're providing low-income housing, but to it, and maybe we can get developers to start building modular housing within to help us with the strategy and to do more. So I believe we're providing hope for many of our people, and I hope that this report gets full acceptance and is fully circulated to as many publics as possible. I think it's important when you look at it. As I mentioned, attachment 2, and I'll finish up, Your Worship. We have actions, the time frame, and the status. Some things are ongoing and will be ongoing for quite a while, but some things are complete or in progress immediately. So With that, I'll let people read it and others to speak to it, Your Worship. Thank you. Excuse me.
Okay, Councillor Heed.
Yeah, after that long sermon from Councillor McNulty, it really confuses the matter even more with respect to what is going on. If he honestly thinks within 6 years within this strategy we're going to solve homeless or homelessness, I'll remind him of a former mayor of Vancouver, Gregor Robertson, who said he was going to solve homeless in his term in office, and we know what happened there, and we know what happened in Vancouver. I don't necessarily disagree with the recommendations put forward. It's just information coming to us and information going to all different levels of government. Mayor, my concern is whether we have an understanding of the difference between homelessness and homeless, because the majority of complaints we get from people that are sleeping in our parks, sleeping in our alcoves, sleeping in our lanes, in our forests and all that, those are homeless people, not homelessness people. And I think we've got to be very clear on what we're doing and what our strategy is, because I go over the strategy and I looked up a couple of definitions of homelessness and homeless. And I think we've got to have a clear understanding, homelessness. And I just want to read this because I think this clears up an issue here for our understanding. Homelessness refers to the state or condition of individuals or families who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. It encompasses a range of situations, including sleeping on the streets, in cars, in temporary shelters, or staying temporarily with friends or family members. Homelessness is often accompanied by a lack of stable housing, which can result in a multitude of challenges such as limited access to basic necessities, healthcare, employment opportunities, and social support systems. It is a complex social issue influenced by various factors, including poverty, unemployment, mental health issues, substance abuse, and systemic inequalities. So that's a clear definition, and you can look this up yourself using an AI, ChatGPT, and that's exactly what it'll tell you about homelessness. But when you talk about homeless, when we use the term homeless, we're implying that there is no hope for change. These are the people that are so visual out there in our communities, and these are the people, whether it's related to Alderbridge or some other areas in Richmond, that are sleeping under our bridges or something like that, are the homeless people. So when I look at this strategy, and I wasn't around in 2019, and certainly that's fair, but I'm going to be around for 4 years. This is our strategy here in Richmond. So, by 2029, I'm not sure where we'll be on that, but I can guarantee you one thing, beside me paying my taxes and hopefully being alive, that we won't have dealt with the homeless or homelessness problem in Richmond, that's for sure. So I just wanted to make sure that we, as a council, really understand the differences here. And is this a comprehensive strategy that's looking at those poverty issues, those social issues, those mental health issues that are really causing the homeless side of the equation? Yes, we are doing a lot on Lemur. Yes, we're doing a lot on some of the other affordable housing here in Richmond, and we need to do more. Absolutely. But the crisis out there right now, whether it's in our community or in Vancouver, is the homeless problem. And I just want to ensure that staff is well aware that we've got to look at this, and council is well aware of this, because this is the plight on our community that people are recognizing and seeing, whether it's they're coming in by SkyTrain or whatever. And I got to tell you, this strategy, maybe great at the time, and there is some mention of short-term parts of it, the vulnerable populations that we have to deal with and all that. But I just think the focus is somewhat convoluted in that we've got to somehow differentiate between homeless and homelessness. and I don't think the report hits it. So, Mayor, I'm fine with the recommendations going forward, but what I'm not fine with is our strategy overall. And I just wanted to bring this up as a comment, and I don't need a response of it, so we're well aware of where we are on this issue here within our city.
All right, thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair. Well, I agree with the comments from Councillor McNulty and the comments from Councillor Heed as well. The fact of the matter is, this is what you would call a stretch goal. I think I don't know if homelessness or homelessness will be solved in that time frame, but it is a stretch. And the other thing that I think is important for everybody and the public to look at too is to look at it in the context of the other strategies that the city has. So it's not standalone. I found it supports several of the city's overall strategies, which is important. And I also thought that the 5 strategic directions and 32 actions are actually quite comprehensive. As has been mentioned, I totally agree. This is a very complex and complicated issue. The other part of it is Richmond isn't, well, it is an island, but it's not on its own. This is obviously a Metro Vancouver provincial, it's a national, it's an international problem. So working and collaborating with partners, senior levels of government, non-governmental organizations, community groups is crucial for it as well. I like the report in terms of the recognition of those factors and also the role that senior levels of government play. So notwithstanding the very excellent comments that were made by others, I'm actually quite happy with it. And I think it's important to look at it in the context of everything else the city's doing. There are a lot of other reports that we have, other strategies, and I think it'll fit together. Whether it solves it in the time frame, I'll be optimistic. But it's a stretch goal, and we have to keep trying. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rao.
Yeah, Your Worship, I want to ask staff a question on CNCL 88, the last paragraph. You mentioned that there's an organization called Luma Native Housing Society, which came to make a presentation or some update to the Richmond Community Homeless Table in 2022. And then, I mean, this group is being given the mandate to coordinate access and referral system in the Greater Vancouver region. So I want to know what new information did they bring to the table, or what kind of updates that we need to know. And I understand that this has been a concern in the local community, saying that we need to have a coordinated referral system for people who are looking for affordable housing. So I mean, where can we find more information about what they presented to us?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, representatives of the Luma Native Housing Society have recently given a presentation to the Richmond Homelessness Table. And I'm happy to try and provide a very brief summary here. This coordinated access and referral system allows service providers to intake an individual who's experiencing homelessness into a data management system and refer that individual with their permission to a variety of housing and support services across Metro Vancouver. So this is not isolated just to Richmond, and an individual in Richmond could be referred to services both outside Richmond and across health jurisdictions. So, for example, referred to programs in Surrey. So this will enable a one-stop point of entry into homelessness referral services, where an individual doesn't have to tell their story multiple times. This system is currently being rolled out in the township of Langley as the first region, with increasing rollout over the following 3 months. So we anticipate that by early 2024, this system will be operational and in place in Richmond.
Okay, to follow up on that, so will this replace what we have been talking about, having a central referral system in our own city? So could this really replace what we have been talking about in the past?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, I'm not aware what the past discussions were, but certainly I can look into that.
Yeah, because I think we have presentations from the local groups saying that we need to have a person in charge of the system, and everything can come to that coordinator, and then going out. So perhaps this may help us.
Yes.
I believe that Councillor Au may be referring to discussions around the Lima units that the city secures through development and having a centralised list and contact. We are doing a follow-up. We have a direction on that, but that is something separate to what Chris was referring to.
Well, I think it's more than just Lima, because, we heard presentations saying that, people get into the waiting list of the BC Housing, and then they get lost, because, there's never feedback telling them where they are and things like that. So I think it's more than just the Lima, the people who are waiting for some kind of housing arrangements. And I think they felt that they get lost in the system. So I think hopefully this can help.
All right, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. So if we go to page 81 of this excellent report, step 1 is prevent pathway into homelessness. Step 2 is to support residents who are experiencing homelessness. Step 3 is provide pathways out of homelessness. And step 4 is foster collaboration and community building among community partners. And the last step, number 5, is communicate and research and monitor homelessness. My concern is if someone is homeless, very, very often they are mentally ill or they have a very serious drug addiction problem. So none of those steps deal with that. So my question to staff is, if we experience, if the police or Fox 80 car or one of our service providers finds a person who clearly is mentally ill or seriously drug addicted, can we put them into like a Riverview or a kind of a detox or evaluation place where they can be assessed if their issue is drugs or if their issue is mental illness?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, that would best be a question asked of Vancouver Coastal Health with regards to the services and supports that can be mandated for an individual who's perhaps experiencing a mental health crisis. So that would be best directed to Vancouver Coastal Health.
Well, then I have 2 suggestions. I think that we need to go down this path, because the majority of the problems that we're experiencing in our city are people that are chronically homeless for very good reasons, whether it's mental problems or whether it's drug addiction. So I wonder if we shouldn't do 2 things. One is write to Vancouver Coast Health Authority and ask that these people get the help they need, even though technically it's going to be against their will, but they could be taken to a facility where they can be assessed to find out at least what the major problem is. And then I think we should write a letter to the province asking that we have a modern version of Riverview, a place that is good for detox and for triage and for dealing with mental illness. Because if the people aren't taken care of, nothing is going to change. And none of these 5 steps are going to address those really chronically ill people that are out in the community. So I'd like to move that we write those 2 letters.
Isn't the province talking about looking at that kind of legislation to, to put into custody certain people? Just saying that. Yep.
I thought maybe I can jump in here. I'm just going to reflect on what we're doing here with this report is providing you an update. We're not, the strategy you adopted in 2019, and you may want to revisit discussion of elements of the strategy, that's fair enough. But what we're doing with this particular report is giving you an update on what occurred in terms of implementing our strategy during 2022. Mark here is more qualified than I am to respond around operational issues. This report and this update is not really about operational responses to homelessness. This is a strategic document, and what we're doing is providing you with an update. Mr. Mayor, it is my understanding that the province is considering and struggling with the issue of mandatory treatment in certain instances. It's a very controversial topic. There are people that advocate it very strongly, and there appear to be equal numbers of people and experts who oppose it very strongly as well. But that is really not an issue that our strategy aims to resolve. And Mark may have a little.
Yeah,
more on the
Mr. Corrado, do you have something to add to that?
Yes, Your Worship. So regarding whether people can be admitted or there are provisions under the Mental Health Act for police to apprehend people. Right now we have Fox 80, which is a joint unit between police, RCMP, and mental health nurses. These mental health nurses can make a diagnosis on scene. I've seen it in action. It's very effective, and people can be committed under the Mental Health Act. From that standpoint, it's up to the health authorities, doctors, to determine how long of a stay is required.
All right. All right, thank you. All right, so please, you should stay here. You should stay here because we've got Councillor Wolf who's bound to have some questions. Councillor Wolf, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. I do have just a couple of questions. First, just a comment. I appreciate everyone's discussion contribution so far. I think this is worthy of being off the consent agenda for that fact alone. To get this right or to keep improving it, we need to get updates. We have a strategy, and there's additions we can add to the strategy going forward. So I think it's great. Just one point that I think is obvious, but is worth saying, that no one is safe from experiencing homelessness or being homeless. It's a very diverse population. Age-wise, mental health disorders can come at any time. So my question, first one, is in regards to our strategic direction number 4, where we are fostering collaboration and community building among community partners. So the appendix for this report only listed one action that was complete, I guess it is, as of this update. And it is 4.2. It's the one about the community homelessness table, and it's been developed. And then in the report on page 89, it mentions that they've met many times. Years back, when this was first being critiqued, this strategy, one thing we heard from people was that the table, the community homelessness table, needs to have representation from people with lived experience. So that's my question to staff. I know in the report it mentions it's government agencies and community-based homelessness service providers, but is there an actual person or people with the experience, or is it just represented through the service providers?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Wolf, at this point it is government agencies and service providers.
Okay, thanks. My next comment then is in regards to what I think is a success of our strategy. Just recently, I was made aware of an area where people were homeless, and it was a growing concern to people in the neighborhood. And I just want to applaud the city, all of our partners, and how fast they were able to respond and provide what was needed. One thing that I picked up from last week at the UBCM, and I don't have the source of this information right now, but it was comparing how much it costs to have a person in supportive housing versus homeless. And it was something in the range of about $55,000 per year for the healthcare and correction services for someone who's homeless, and $55,000 compared to about $37,000 if they're given the person's in supportive housing. So, and I know there's lots of agreements and disagreements to the success of the strategy, but for local spending and improving well-being, I think providing that supportive housing is definitely a key part of our strategy going forward. So thank you very much. I will support this.
All right, with that, we're going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That is carried. I'm sorry, you want to write a letter to whom?
To the provincial government, asking them for suggesting that maybe it's time to build a modern Riverview for homeless people so they can be assessed. Because right now, we don't have like a detox or like, they can go to the hospital for a short period of time, but after that, they're back on the street again. And I think that the province has to step up and provide the services that we need. And I like the idea of a sort of a one location where everybody can get the help that they need. And I think it's.
All right, is it seconded? All right, so that's moved and seconded. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, I mean, my question is really when the letter gets formulated and massaged in terms of the actual wording, we'll come back and have another look at that, whether the term Riverview was used or whatever, because I am supportive of looking at additional resources in this regard. I'm just wondering, as far as the process, will it come back and will the letter actually be massaged a little bit and we'll have a look?
No, it won't.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I'm not going to support this either. First of all, I think that the province is looking at this very thing. Secondly, it is a very, very complex subject. And thirdly, to have a modern Riverview, what does that mean? I think that this is a very complex subject and not something that we, with no information and no background on this, should be giving an opinion. So I'm not going to support it. Councillor Heed.
Yes, I guess I'd like to, if I can, amend the motion here or bring another motion forward, that we have a review of our homeless strategy, to update it, and to include several issues that have been brought up this evening, and how we deal with them in Richmond.
That is not an amendment.
Well, I'll
That
make,
is-
that's
that
what I
is
said,
not
then
an
I'll make a
amendment.
separate motion after this.
Fine. Councillor Howe.
Yeah, Worship, I'm not going to support this motion unless, we can get some feedback from staff on the issue itself before we move forward. Because I don't know if, having a modernized Riverview would be the solution or the best option, for addressing the issue. I mean, if after some research and staff recommend that this might be the right approach, then I think we can go forward with that. But without that kind of information, research and options, I don't think just telling the provincial government this is the best thing to do would be appropriate.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, I'm mixed about this because I did a practicum at Riverview when I was doing my mental health aspects at UBC. I think before we impulsively act, I'd like to know what the government is doing. Your worship, you keep saying the province is looking at it, et cetera. What are they looking at? Okay, I think it's important. The other thing too is we want to find out, just because people were at Riverview, for example, there were all kinds of people there. We need to put them in what I call a facility that is proactive and productive and healthy, so that they become, as opposed to just throwing them all in one place. So I'm not saying that this motion is necessarily out of place, but maybe it's too premature to request, because I have no idea what the province is coming unless somebody has further information. You might have got it at UBCM, but I'm not aware of specifics that they're doing. And I think before we do some things and throw our hat behind them, we find out what they're proposing, et cetera. And the other thing in this, we need the professionals behind us. We need to know the practitioner we mentioned, CAR 80, Fox 80, et cetera, and the various things. We need to have the professional. We are not the professionals in that sense. I don't know what the answer is, what the solution is, what a nurse does when they come across a person with a police officer in Fox 80 or whatever. So I think before we do that, I'm not trying to toss it out. I'm just saying maybe we should hold up, get our facts together, and I don't disagree about reviewing our strategy if that is the topic after, because you can never do enough by reviewing what you're doing every day of the week to make it better. And I think that's what I want to do. So I'd ask the mover to actually just withdraw it rather than defeat it, so that we can be proactive ourselves in what we're looking at down the road and bring it back in another time.
All right, now, we've got Councillor Liu has a question.
Thank you. I actually have a comment. Now, some of us met with Minister Whiteside for mental health and addictions at UBCM, and we didn't really go into what's going on at Riverside and that, but we did talk about the need for extra mental health supports. We were excited about the Foundry program. They were excited about the Foundry program and what that will be doing for our community here in Richmond for young people. We did talk about our interest in being part of new pilots and programs. We're not specifically asking for like a Riverview here in Richmond. So before we start sending letters off and asking for that, I think we should be careful. And Riverview has been operating recently. I understand there's almost 300 people receiving treatment at the old site. So I think there is work towards that. So I don't know that us necessarily sending letters in that realm makes sense. And I also don't think we should be cobbling together what we're doing with our strategy just as an ad hoc. One of the things that does come out of that strategy is doing some more work around discharge and transition planning, and that was brought up at our meeting with Minister Whiteside as well, is improving those services. And so I think we've actually got some very on-the-ground practical things that we want to work on that make sense for our community here in Richmond, and I think we should move forward with those.
Wolf has a question or comment.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just a brief comment then to add to this discussion, which again I think is valuable, and none of us around the table are experts in it. But two things I can personally share is about 10 years ago I met someone for the first time in Riverview who was at a very challenging time in their life, and very happy to report that person over a decade later is living down the road from where I am now in Richmond, and is doing incredibly well. I know it's an old format or what was Riverview is an old style that was deemed not suitable and was closed down. But we do have to know that on that site, there's been new facilities opened up for youth, for people on the extreme end of the spectrum, for addiction or mental illness. We also need to be aware that just in BC, there's about 135,000 some odd people who live with severe addiction and mental illness. Now, a Riverview is not going to be the solution for all of them, but some form of supportive housing to the level that Riverview provided is probably going to be supportive or a solution for some of them. So I think writing this letter will only further our conversation with the province and multiple hands on deck here to work towards a solution. Thanks.
Yes. Yeah, wrapping up. It sounds to me like what I'm learning from everyone, including staff and the other councillors, is that we probably need a lot more information on this. I just read the report and thought, what else can we do? I got excited about potentially working towards an even bigger change. So I'm okay with withdrawing the motion, and let's get some more information from staff. Let's talk to our MLAs, and let's find out what we need to ask for before we write the letter. So I'm okay with withdrawing the motion.
Well, we have to have the permission of the meeting to withdraw a motion. Is there anybody objecting, including Councillor Liu, Councillor Wolf, to the withdrawal of that motion? I'm not seeing or hearing anything, so we'll consider it to be withdrawn.
Thank you.
Now, Councillor Heed, you had another referral of some sort?
Yes, I'd like to make a referral with respect to this discussion here, and it relates to us having staff update the City of Richmond Homelessness Strategy 2019 to 2029 with the issues that we have discussed today, and using the words of Councillor Liu, on the ground, practical solutions to the problem, to include how we deal with the people with severe mental health issues, severe drug addiction, which leads to the homeless problem that we have, and possibly the homelessness problem that we have within the city of Richmond.
Before you do that, I'm going to suggest you hold that thought and you draft a motion exactly what you are looking for. Because as well spoken as that is, staff are going to be wondering, what are they supposed to update or review or something? So may I suggest, you can bring it to GP next week or something, whatever you want, but let's not fly off and just do that ad hoc. Is that okay?
That's fine, unless someone would like it now. I will do that.
I can tell you that based on what you just said, I don't know what staff would be coming back with. Let's be specific in the areas that you want reviewed. Then we can put it on the table, we can debate it and deal with it.
Absolutely, and I'm certain that staff already knows my feelings on these three critical issues, and I will do that, Mayor, and I'll circulate it before it does come forward.
Okay, thank you. That completes the matters removed from the consent agenda. Going to public announcements and events. Unfortunately, just before the weekend, we heard on Friday about Maple Ridge RCMP Constable Rick O'Brien of the Ridge Meadows Detachment, who lost his life in the course of his duty. Two fellow officers also suffered non-life-threatening injuries and are on the road to recovery. The tragic incident reminds us all of the risks that RCMP members and other first responders on the front line take every day to protect our communities and keep us all safe. So on behalf of the City of Richmond and City Council, we extend our sincere condolences to the family of Constable O'Brien, his family, colleagues, and friends, and we also wish his fellow officers a speedy recovery. Of course, it was just a year ago or so, maybe less, that Constable Yang, a Richmond resident in the Burnaby Detachment, lost her life. And the issues, we talk about homelessness and mental health issues and whatever. Of course, that was all involved in that one. Who knows what's going to be involved in this one? And so for all of us, we just have to be reminded of the dangers of being a first responder. And while it can be a great job, it also comes with a huge amount of risk. And unfortunately, apparently Maple Ridge lost a really good one the other day. Today is Yom Kippur, also known as the Day of Atonement and the holiest day in the Jewish faith. The day began with fasting and prayer yesterday and ends at sunrise today, which is, no, that's got to be sunset, 7:04 p.m., with people encouraged to spend that time in acts of prayer, repentance, and charity. It also marks the end of Rosh Hashanah and Jewish New Year's, and we extend best wishes to all who celebrate in that way. Then on Saturday, September 30th, is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and the city will recognize this day of reflection with a number of events and activities throughout the week. These include storytime conversations at Richmond libraries and displaying the survivors' flag at City Hall. City staff will also wear orange shirts, ribbons, or pins to honor the survivors of the residential school system, the children who did not make it home, as well as their families and communities. And so for more information, because there are a number of events throughout the city, please visit our website at richmond.ca. Then the Richmond RCMP and the Richmond Multicultural Society invite residents to a special community dialogue session on Thursday, September 28th at 6:30 p.m. The Policing of Racism gathering will explore racism and proactive policing initiatives in Richmond through storytelling and discussion. So if you want more information on that, go to rmcs.bc.ca. Then we have National Seniors Day and Positive Aging Week. October 1st is National Seniors Day, and October 1st to 7th is Positive Aging Week in Richmond. The city is recognizing the contribution of our senior residents with a series of free or low-cost events throughout the week. Highlights include a fun pickleball tournament at Thompson Community Center, a Seniors Day social at West Richmond, and a positive aging fair at Minaroo Center for Active Living. So if you want more information on that score, go to richmond.ca/positive aging. And finally, it's a reminder that City Hall will be closed on Monday, October the 2nd, as a time of reflection for the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It will also be closed on Monday, October 9th for the Thanksgiving holiday. Various city services will still be available on those days via our website or the My Richmond app. Due to the Thanksgiving holiday, the next council meeting will be on Tuesday, October 10th at 7 o'clock, right here in council chambers. So, Madam Clerk, bylaws for adoption.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is one bylaw for final adoption with noted opposition.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Day.
I'm a noted opposition.
Oh, yes, yes, Madam Clerk, there was
Councillors-
opposition, Councillors Day, Steves, and Wolf.
You said no. With noted opposition. Oh, with, sorry, my apologies. Anyhow, I don't know.
Well, there you go. It's worth reminding. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried with Councillor Day opposed. Councillor Wolf, are you opposed to that one?
Yes, thank you.
Me too.
Okay, so Councillors Wolf, Galanders, and Councillor Day opposed. And on the development permit panel.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are two recommendations. Recommendation 1, that the chair's report for the development permit panel meetings held on October 20th, 2022 be received for information. And recommendation 2, that the recommendations of the panel to authorize the issuance of development permit for the properties located at 6700 Francis Road be endorsed and the permit so issued.
Moved and seconded. Councillor Day? Okay. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? Anyone opposed? All right, that is carried. Someone move it. We are now adjourned. Thank you.